3 days ago, I was having the most romantic Valentine's Day dinner of my life. Then a woman walked into the restaurant with 3 young kids, spotted my date, and loudly announced that she was his wife and wanted to know why he wasn't home helping with bedtime. I had been unknowingly dating a married father of 3 for 6 months. I'm 28F and I met Ryan about 7 months ago at a work conference. I'm in marketing and he said he worked in sales for a tech company. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We exchanged numbers and started texting regularly after the conference. Ryan lived about an hour away from me, which he said was perfect because he traveled a lot for work and was often in my city for meetings. We started going on dates whenever he was in town, which was usually once or twice a week. From the beginning, Ryan seemed like the perfect guy. He was thoughtful, always picked great restaurants, remembered little details about my life. He'd bring me flowers, text me good morning every day, and made me feel like I was really special to someone. The only thing that seemed a little odd was his schedule. Ryan was never available on weekends, which he explained by saying he had a really demanding job that required weekend client calls and travel. He also couldn't do last-minute plans because his work schedule was so structured. But honestly, I was impressed by how dedicated he was to his career. He seemed ambitious and successful, which I found attractive. Ryan was also really private about his personal life. He didn't have much social media presence, which he said was because his company had strict policies about employees posting online. When I asked about his family, he'd give vague answers about his parents living far away and not being close with his siblings. I thought maybe he'd had a difficult childhood and didn't like talking about family stuff. Some people are just private, and I didn't want to push. Over the course of 6 months, our relationship got pretty serious. Ryan told me he was falling in love with me and that he'd never felt this way about anyone before. He started talking about our future together and how he wanted to introduce me to his friends soon. The physical side of our relationship was amazing too. Ryan was attentive and passionate, and he always made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. He'd tell me how beautiful I was and how lucky he felt to be with me. But looking back now, there were definitely some red flags I ignored or rationalized away. Ryan never invited me to his place. He said he was renting a temporary corporate apartment that was really small and boring, and that he preferred staying at my place since it was more comfortable. Since my apartment is pretty nice and I enjoy hosting, I didn't think much of it. He also never stayed over on Sunday nights, claiming he had early Monday morning meetings and needed to get back to his place to prepare. I thought it was sweet that he was so committed to being professional. Ryan's phone was always face down when we were together, and he'd step away to take calls. He said his job required him to be available for clients at all hours, even during personal time. Again, I was impressed by his work ethic. Around Christmas, Ryan started acting a little strange. He was less available than usual and seemed stressed about something. When I asked what was wrong, he said work was really busy during the holidays and that he was dealing with some family drama. He couldn't see me on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day because he said he had to visit his elderly grandmother who was sick. I was disappointed, but understood that family came first. After the holidays, Ryan seemed back to normal. He apologized for being distant and said he wanted to make it up to me by planning something special for Valentine's Day. I was really excited because Valentine's Day fell on a Tuesday this year, which meant Ryan could actually do something romantic without worrying about his weekend work commitments. Ryan made reservations at this amazing Italian restaurant downtown that I'd been wanting to try. He told me to dress up because he wanted to celebrate how much our relationship meant to him. February 14th finally arrived, and I spent all day getting ready. I bought a new dress, got my hair done, the whole thing. I was so excited to have a proper Valentine's Day celebration with someone I was genuinely falling in love with. Ryan picked me up at 7 p.m. looking incredibly handsome in a suit. He brought me a dozen red roses and told me I looked beautiful. The drive to the restaurant was perfect. We were laughing and talking about how nice it was to finally have a special evening together. The restaurant was everything I'd hoped for. Dim lighting, romantic music, amazing food. Ryan had requested a corner table that felt private and intimate. He ordered a bottle of wine, and we started with appetizers while talking about our future plans. About halfway through dinner, Ryan excused himself to use the restroom. While he was gone, I was checking my phone and just enjoying the romantic atmosphere. That's when I heard a woman's voice behind me saying something about table for 4 to the hostess. I didn't pay much attention until I heard a child asking loudly why they were there so late on a school night. I glanced over and saw a woman with 3 young kids, probably ages 4, 7, and 9, being seated at a table across the restaurant. The woman looked stressed, and the kids seemed tired and cranky. I felt bad for her because managing 3 kids at a nice restaurant had to be difficult, especially on Valentine's Day when she probably just wanted a romantic evening. Ryan came back from the restroom and immediately froze when he saw my expression. I was about to ask if he was okay when the woman across the restaurant suddenly stood up. She had spotted Ryan. The woman started walking toward our table with this look of absolute fury on her face. The three kids followed behind her, looking confused and a little scared. When she reached our table, she looked directly at Ryan and said loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, "What the hell are you doing here? You said you had to work late tonight. Who is this?" My brain couldn't process what was happening. I looked at Ryan, expecting him to explain that this woman had mistaken him for someone else. Instead, Ryan's face went completely white, and he started stammering about how he could explain everything. That's when the woman turned to me and said, "I'm sorry you got caught up in this, but you should know that this man is my husband and the father of these three children." The restaurant went dead silent. I could feel everyone staring at our table. The kids were asking their mom what was happening and why Daddy was there with a stranger. I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to deny it or explain that this was some kind of misunderstanding. But he just sat there looking like he wanted to disappear. The woman, who I now realized was Ryan's wife, continued talking to me. She said her name was Jennifer and that she and Ryan had been married for 12 years. She'd gotten suspicious when he started working late so often and had hired a private investigator who followed him to the restaurant. Jennifer showed me photos on her phone of Ryan leaving my apartment building, of us holding hands while walking down the street, of him buying flowers at the store where he'd gotten my Valentine's roses. I was so shocked I couldn't speak. This whole time, I thought I was in a committed relationship with a single man who was crazy about me. Instead, I was apparently the other woman in an affair that was destroying a family. Jennifer told the kids to go wait by the hostess stand while she finished talking to us. Then she turned back to Ryan and told him he had exactly 1 minute to end whatever this was and come home to deal with the mess he created. Ryan finally found his voice and started trying to explain to me that his marriage had been over for years and that he and Jennifer were basically just roommates at this point. He claimed they were planning to get divorced, but were waiting until the kids were older. Jennifer immediately shut that down. She said their marriage had problems like any couple, but that Ryan had never mentioned divorce, and they'd actually been in couples therapy trying to work things out. She also mentioned that they'd had sex just 2 days earlier, which made me feel absolutely sick. I stood up from the table and told both of them that I was leaving. Jennifer actually apologized to me and said she understood that I probably had no idea Ryan was married. Ryan tried to grab my arm and begged me to let him explain properly. He said everything with Jennifer was complicated and that what we had was real. I told him not to touch me and that I never wanted to see him again. I left the restaurant and cried in my car for 20 minutes before driving home. Update: 2 days later. Ryan has been calling and texting nonstop since Valentine's Day. I've been ignoring everything, but his messages have gotten increasingly desperate. He's claiming that he really does love me and that his marriage has been dead for years. According to Ryan, he and Jennifer only stay together for the kids, and they live completely separate lives. He says Jennifer showing up at the restaurant was her way of trying to sabotage his happiness because she's jealous that he found someone who makes him happy. Ryan is begging me to meet him so he can explain everything properly. He says if I'll just give him a chance to tell his side of the story, I'll understand that what we have is worth fighting for. But honestly, I don't care what his excuse is. Even if his marriage really was over, he lied to me for 6 months about having a wife and children. He let me fall in love with him while keeping this massive secret. I keep thinking about those 3 kids at the restaurant. They looked so confused and scared when their mom was confronting their dad about being with another woman. The youngest one was probably too little to understand what was happening, but the older 2 definitely knew something was very wrong. I've been the other woman without knowing it, and now I'm part of the reason those children might grow up in a broken home. The whole thing makes me feel disgusting. Update: 1 week later. Jennifer contacted me. She found my number in Ryan's phone and sent me a text asking if we could talk. I was hesitant at first because I didn't want to get more involved in their family drama, but I also felt like I owed her some kind of explanation or apology. We met for coffee yesterday afternoon, and the conversation was both easier and harder than I expected. Jennifer was actually really kind to me. She said she understood that I was as much a victim of Ryan's lies as she was, and that she didn't blame me for what happened. But she also told me things about Ryan that made me realize how completely I'd been deceived. According to Jennifer, Ryan has never traveled for work the way he claimed to me. His job is local sales for a small company, and he's home most nights by 6 p.m. All those times he said he was in my city for work meetings, he was actually just driving an hour to see me and lying to Jennifer about where he was going. The weekend unavailability that I thought was due to work commitments was actually because that's when Ryan spent time with his family. Saturday morning soccer games, Sunday family dinners, all the normal stuff that married fathers do with their kids. Jennifer also told me that Ryan had been having affairs throughout their marriage. I wasn't his first, and based on his pattern of behavior, I probably wouldn't have been his last. She said she'd suspected something was going on for months because Ryan had become secretive about his phone and was staying out late more often. The private investigator she hired had only been following him for 2 weeks before catching him with me. The most heartbreaking part was when Jennifer told me about the impact this was having on their children. The kids had been asking why Daddy was so angry all the time and why Mommy seemed sad. The oldest child had apparently been having nightmares since the restaurant incident. Jennifer said she was planning to file for divorce, not because of me specifically, but because she finally had proof of what she'd suspected for years. She couldn't keep pretending their marriage was salvageable when Ryan was clearly committed to cheating. I asked Jennifer if there was anything I could do to help, and she said the best thing would be for me to have no contact with Ryan so he couldn't use me as an excuse to avoid dealing with his family responsibilities. Update: 3 weeks later. Ryan showed up at my apartment. I've been successfully ignoring his calls and texts for weeks, so he decided to try a different approach. He waited outside my building until I came home from work and then followed me inside. Ryan looked terrible. He'd lost weight and seemed like he hadn't been sleeping. He immediately started apologizing and begging me to hear him out. I told him he needed to leave or I'd call the police, but he said he just needed 5 minutes to explain everything. Against my better judgment, I let him into my apartment. Ryan's story was that Jennifer had been manipulating the situation to make him look worse than he actually was. He claimed their marriage really had been over for years and that they'd been living like roommates who only stayed together for convenience. According to Ryan, Jennifer was jealous that he'd found happiness with me and was now trying to destroy our relationship by playing the victim. He said the reason he never told me about his family was because he knew I'd refuse to date him if I knew he was technically still married, even though the marriage was meaningless. Ryan begged me to give him another chance. He said he was willing to file for divorce immediately and that we could start over with complete honesty. But here's the thing, even while he was telling me all this, Ryan was still lying. I knew from my conversation with Jennifer that Ryan had never mentioned divorce before I came along. I knew that he'd been actively participating in family activities and sleeping with his wife throughout our relationship. I also knew from Jennifer that this wasn't Ryan's first affair, which meant his claims about never feeling this way about anyone else were just more lies. I told Ryan that I couldn't trust anything he said because he'd already proven himself to be a liar. Even if everything he was telling me now was true, the fact remained that he deceived me for 6 months about the most basic facts of his life. Ryan got angry and said I was being unfair by believing Jennifer over him. He claimed Jennifer was a bitter woman who was trying to ruin his chance at happiness. That's when I realized that Ryan genuinely believed his own lies. He'd convinced himself that cheating on his wife was justified because their marriage wasn't perfect, and that lying to me was okay because he thought I might not understand the complexity of his situation. I told Ryan to leave and not to contact me again. Update: 2 months later. I found out through mutual friends that Ryan and Jennifer are getting divorced. Apparently, the restaurant incident was the final straw for Jennifer. She filed for divorce the week after it happened and is asking for primary custody of the children. Ryan has been telling people that Jennifer is being vindictive and trying to keep him from his kids, but based on what I know about the situation, it sounds like Jennifer is just trying to protect her children from Ryan's pattern of dishonesty and infidelity. I also heard that Ryan tried to date another woman shortly after our relationship ended, but that it didn't work out when she found out about his pending divorce and the circumstances around it. As for me, I've been taking a break from dating while I process everything that happened. This experience really messed with my ability to trust people, and I want to work through that before getting involved with anyone new. I've been going to therapy to talk about how I could have been so completely fooled by someone for 6 months. My therapist says that people like Ryan are often very skilled at compartmentalizing their lives and presenting whatever version of themselves they think others want to see. She also pointed out that many of Ryan's lies were believable because they were based on partial truths. He really did work in sales, he really was busy with responsibilities, he really was dealing with family stress. He just left out the crucial details about being married with children. Update: 6 months later. I'm doing much better now and have started dating again, though I'm definitely more cautious about red flags. I haven't had any contact with Ryan since he showed up at my apartment, and I hope it stays that way. I did hear through the grapevine that his divorce was finalized and that Jennifer got primary custody of the kids. Ryan apparently has them every other weekend and one evening during the week. I also heard that Ryan's been struggling financially because of the divorce settlement and child support payments. He had to move into a small apartment and sell his car to help pay for everything. Part of me feels bad about the role I played in the destruction of his family, even though I didn't know I was doing it at the time. But mostly I'm just grateful that I found out the truth when I did, rather than getting even more deeply involved with someone who is capable of such elaborate deception. Final update, 1 year later. It's been a year since the worst Valentine's Day of my life, and I can honestly say I'm in a much better place now. I'm in a healthy relationship with someone who is upfront about his life from day one. When we first started dating, he showed me pictures of his family, introduced me to his friends, and was completely transparent about his work schedule and living situation. It's amazing how different it feels to be with someone who actually wants you to know who they are, rather than someone who's constantly managing what information you have access to. I still think about Jennifer and her kids sometimes, and I hope they're doing well. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for her to discover that her husband had been living a double life, or how hard it is for those children to adjust to their parents' divorce. The whole experience taught me a lot about trusting my instincts and asking direct questions when something feels off. If I ever again date someone who seems oddly unavailable or secretive about their personal life, I'll address it immediately rather than making excuses for them. I also learned that some people are just really good at lying and manipulation, and that being deceived doesn't make me naive or stupid. Ryan had obviously perfected his act over years of cheating, and I wasn't the first person to fall for it. The moral of the story: if someone you're dating is never available on weekends, won't let you see their living space, and is vague about their family and friends, those aren't quirks, they're red flags. And always trust your gut when something feels off, even if you can't put your finger on exactly what's wrong. Also, if you're going to cheat on your spouse, maybe don't take your affair partner to a popular restaurant on Valentine's Day. Just a thought.